The following is a CUNY TV special presentation.
Thank you all for joining us. Again, we're going to do another moment of silence for the incredibly horrific and tragic events in the United States' largest mass shooting that happened over the weekend in Las Vegas. As New Yorkers, we unfortunately understand the trauma and terror when something like this happens on our own soil here in New York. Our thoughts and prayers are with all of those affected. And also, I think we should do a moment of silence for all those affected in Puerto Rico and all the other areas that have been affected by the incredibly destructive storms that have hit our country over the last few weeks. So please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Just a quick funny story. I'm standing outside for a second, and the doorman out front hands me his card. And he goes, "I've written a book. You should go get it on Amazon. It's called The Revolving New York Door, The Story of a New York Doorman." So only in New York could a doorman write a story. And I said, "That's a great title." He goes, "Wait till you read the book." So today I am pleased to welcome our special guest, Assemblywoman and Republican candidate for mayor, Nicole Malliotakis. Nicole is here as first time at an ABNY Power Breakfast, so welcome, Nicole. A lifelong New Yorker, and like so many of us, she is the daughter of immigrants who came to New York in search of the American dream. With her father coming over from Greece and her mother a Cuban exile, they put down their roots on a small business in Brooklyn and inspired Nicole to pursue a career in public service. Prior to being elected Assemblywoman, Nicole served as liaison for the state Senate, Senator John Markey and Governor George Pataki. She also worked as a public affairs manager for Con Ed, focusing on the state's energy, economic, and environmental policies. She was reelected to the Assembly for a third term, and she represents the District 64, which includes parts of Staten Island and Brooklyn. She has fought for immigration, for infrastructure improvements and expanding transit service in both boroughs, and is dedicated to improving New York's economic climate, reducing taxes, and burdens on small businesses and residents. Her constituents along the eastern shore of Staten Island were among the hardest hit from Superstorm Sandy, which hit us 5 years ago, and she has worked very hard for the community's recovery. Now that she is running for mayor, we look forward to hearing her plans and priorities and overall vision for New York City. Assemblywoman, please join us, and thank you for coming to ABNY.
I'm Nicole Malliotakis, and I'm running for mayor because I see that the city that I was born in, that I love, the city that my parents as immigrants came to for a better opportunity, for a better life. The American dream and the promise of New York City as a beacon of hope, I believe, is slipping away little by little. It's becoming increasingly difficult to make it in the city of New York. Whether you want to buy your first home, whether you want to start a business, whether you simply want to be able to keep up with the rent. And as my parents, when they first came to this country, it's an interesting story because my father came from Greece, which was the birthplace of democracy. My mother is a Cuban refugee, and she fled the Castro regime. She fled for obvious reasons. The Castro regime had came in, had taken their gas stations, my grandfather's gas stations, has taken their home, and my mother fled the Castro regime, leaving her father behind. She never really saw him again, except for one time. What we have in America is so truly special. And New York City, for many immigrants, had been a beacon of hope and opportunity for many years. But as I've said, we've seen it become increasingly difficult to make it. And as Frank Sinatra said, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. But nowadays, it's becoming harder to do that. One of the biggest parts of, and I'll talk a little bit about why, but one of the biggest things that I've noticed is that the quality of life in our city is deteriorating. We have a homeless crisis that is epic. We have a mental illness crisis that is going unaddressed. And combined, it has created a major issue for not only the individuals who are affected directly by living on the street or that are mentally ill and going untreated, but it's also affecting the quality of life for the rest of the people in our city, because in some cases, it's a public safety issue. In some cases, there's issues of aggressive panhandling, public urination. These are all the things that this environment has, an environment that has been fostered by policies that have come out of this administration. With homelessness, the mayor's plan is to invest $1 billion over the next 5 years to house people in shelters and to house people, not shelters, in hotel rooms, rather. He wants to spend additional about $300 or $400 million to invest in building 90 shelters in the community. I've said instead we should be utilizing that money to partner with nonprofit organizations that can build permanent solutions. I think what we're doing in this environment right now is trying to commit people to a life in a shelter system, to say we're going to go into the communities and build an additional 90 shelters and not look at ways to really partner creatively with nonprofit organizations that can provide senior housing or veterans housing is a big mistake. We need to reinvent our HHC hospital system for the needs of today. And right now, many of those needs are substance abuse, many of those needs are mental illness, and we have the ability, because many of our public hospitals are under capacity in terms of beds, to revamp it for the needs of today, and that will help contribute, that would help solve some of the problems that we're facing in terms of the HHC being very much in the red. But also, when you go to a hospital these days and you have a stent put in, you have a tumor removed, you are now leaving that same day in some cases. In some days, that's why a lot of these procedures are moving to outpatient treatment. We need to utilize the space that we have on these premises, the space that we have in these buildings for the needs of today. I want to talk about mental illness in particular, because this is something that we're reading about regularly in the paper. We have a police officer who was recently assassinated by somebody who was schizophrenic. We had an EMT in the Bronx who was recently run over and killed by someone who was also mentally ill. You read about it regularly in the paper. An individual being slashed in broad daylight when she was with her baby on the subway by someone who was homeless and also mentally ill. Somebody who is stabbed outside Salvation Army by someone who was also mentally ill and homeless. You had the issue just the other day where someone was defecating outside a building in Chelsea, and a 72-year-old man approached him to ask him what he was doing in front of his building, and he was stabbed. We have a serious issue with mental illness in our city, and the mayor is turning a blind eye to it. He's putting $800 million in a Thrive NYC program that is not addressing the most severely mentally ill, and I think that is a mistake. We need to utilize Kendra's law, which was put in place, it was put in effect by Governor Pataki because someone who was mentally ill had shoved somebody in front of a subway. Now, when you have these instances, and I'll give you the example that I gave with the woman who was homeless, who slashed the woman with the baby in broad daylight on it was a Saturday or Sunday morning, 11 a.m., that individual's arrest record, 60 prior arrests that individual had. That means 60 times she had been rotated in and out of the justice system, in and out of Rikers Island, and never got the treatment that she needed to address her underlying issue, which was mental illness. That shows a failure on our part as a society to get people the help they need, but also to protect the public safety of other people. I put together a 15-point plan to address this issue, and if you want to look in more detail, it's available on my website, NicoleForMayor2017.com. It's a 15-point plan on homelessness, but a 12-point plan on mental illness. And the mental illness plan in particular is a very good one because it utilizes tools that are there in terms of training for correction so they can, when people are coming out of the system, to rotate them to get them mandated treatment. Talks about the need of supportive housing. The previous governors and mayors had come together and they had a New York 3 agreement, which was proven to be very successful. But when we have a mayor who cannot work with the governor to get the things that we desperately need in this city, it is a major problem for the rest of us. And that is the same with transit. When we look at the transit system, it is decades beyond its lifespan in terms of the subway signal system. We have subway signal system in the greatest city of the world that have pre-World War II condition signals. Now think about that. Cities like Paris and London and Copenhagen and Vancouver and San Francisco have all invested in moving to a communication-based signal system, but not here in New York City. We are dealing with 70,000 delays a month. The MTA chairman is at his wit's end here, asking for the city and the state to step in as partners to address the emergency plan, just the emergency plan, the maintenance issues, the operational issues that are needed today to add more maintenance people to upgrade signals, but not even so much going to the capital plan part yet. Now, when we talk about not being able to get where you need to go on time, which is what happened to me this morning, it presents a major issue, and I think part of the problem is that we are not investing in making New York City a 21st century city. We desperately need to take this football and start running with it when it comes to investing in the technology that is necessary to deal with population growth and economic growth. And the money is there. It's a matter of mismanagement. We've increased the city budget by $15 billion this upcoming year. $15 billion we are spending, or set to spend, this upcoming year. More than what we spent during the last year of Michael Bloomberg's last budget he put through. Think about that for a minute. $15 billion more, and we're not even putting money towards the #1 issue that is plaguing our city right now, which I believe is the transit crisis. And we have a mayor that refuses to work with the governor to come together with a long-term solution, whether that's going to be, I think the most viable solution that's on the table right now is looking towards some form of, some type of capital project. I don't want to say, I guess, the word congestion pricing, but the Sam Schwartz plan, I think, is a viable plan that we should truly be looking at in the city. Now, obviously, as a representative from Staten Island and Bay Ridge, I'm sensitive to tolling. I have the most expensive one-way toll in the nation in my district. But that plan has the potential to lower the toll for my constituents. And I want to make sure that if we're going to place tolls on any other bridges in this city, and if it makes sense because we're going to even out the traffic, then we need to have a commitment that there'll be a cap that's going to be affordable. I don't want to have a bunch of $17 tolls in my city. But we need to start looking at the needs of today, and we're not doing that. And I think that that's a big mistake, and we can't continue to kick this ball down the road kick the goalpost down any further. The reality is that this is something that should have been done in the 90s. And I think oftentimes politicians look at, well, how can I spend money today to get the immediate political benefit? What will get me through the next election? Not what should we be doing long-term to invest in the future of our city to keep up with, again, population growth or economic growth, even if it means that 2 mayors from now is going to get credit for it. The other day, I was also talking about the need to invest in smart light technology in our city, something that has been proven to reduce the number of times a car has to stop, reduce the travel time, increasing safety for passengers and people on the street in other cities. Again, this is a mistake, it's a missed opportunity for the city of New York to not be putting resources to upgrading its traffic signal system, especially at a time when our streets are so congested. That is something that is also going to be a priority of mine. If we just take a portion of the money that's allocated now, $1.6 billion that's allocated for Vision Zero, if we just use a portion of that money, we can upgrade the majority of intersections in the city, where it's needed, obviously. We're going to do it intersection by intersection. But I believe that's money that would be much better spent than where it's going now. Education in our city is troubled for a number of reasons. Obviously, we had the terrible tragedy that occurred last week, and there is a need to make our schools more safe. And I think it was a mistake when the mayor decided to do away with the disciplinary actions that were in place by previous administrations. Mayor Michael Bloomberg had already changed some of the disciplinary actions that schools would take his last year in office. But and that had reduced suspensions significantly, because of course we don't want to suspend kids for little things. But if kids are coming in with drugs, they're coming in with weapons, that's a different story. And I think this mayor has made a grave mistake in watering down the disciplinary protocol in our schools that following year, without allowing the Bloomberg reforms to take effect and giving them a chance to play out. We have an issue in our schools right now, and if you talk, and I was at a street fair the other day, and 7 teachers, I was there for maybe 45 minutes, 7 teachers came up to me and said they're desperate because they don't feel safe in their schools. The kids don't respect them. They feel that they can come in with weapons, with drugs. They bully other students. They disrespect their teachers. And in some cases, as you've read, they assault their teachers or principals. And this is a direct result of a policy in which we're telling these kids, you can do whatever you want because nothing's going to happen to you. And I think that's wrong. And we need to go back, revert back to the policies that were in place that last year when Mayor Bloomberg, when he tried to do the right thing and find some equal ground here between overly using suspension, but of course using discipline when needed and ensuring that we have order in our schools. If you don't have order in your schools, these kids can't learn. And at the Wildlife Conservation School, if you look at the statistics, only 5% of those middle school kids are passing the math exams. 13% of them are passing the reading exams. And this is a very troubled school where you have 81% of the teachers are saying they don't feel safe. And that's not this year's survey, that was last year's survey. And yet this administration did absolutely nothing to add metal detectors, to add patrolling at the school, to work with the safety agents and NYPD to ensure that it is a safe environment. And I think that was obviously was a deadly mistake. But we can move forward and we can change these things. But that's the issue, is that we're always being reactive under this administration. I believe we need to be proactive and put in place these things that I'm talking about now, not wait until the next tragedy to occur. With education in general, I believe there's a lot of money that's being wasted at the top levels of bureaucracy. And I've talked about this before, where the controller has even indicated time and again that there is money being wasted with contracts with vendors, high-priced consultants, and services that there's little accountability for. There's little metric system to see if they're even working. And I believe that's hundreds of millions of dollars that can be reevaluated and used elsewhere. And in a city system where we're spending $22,000 a year per pupil, it is a disgrace that we have teachers that are paying for their own supplies, that we have students that don't have a computer education program. And it's even more of a disgrace that we have a mayor that's saying by 2025 all our children will get computer education. What kind of goal is that? And I am very critical of the fact that you take a victory lap and say that our schools are great when 60% of our children are failing the state math and reading exams roughly. Even more shocking is that 80% of our children that graduate the public school system are entering a city university system needing to take remedial math, writing, and reading. That is not a success. And if we spent less money up here and spent more money down here, we're in the classroom, whether that means getting the proper textbooks, whether that means making sure that our teachers have the supplies that they need to do the job, whether it means getting more special assistant teachers in those classrooms where the kids are struggling. That, I believe, will go a long way in making sure that our children are getting the assistance that they need. And that model could be used in other places. I mean, when you look at all the agencies, I believe there's a lot that can be done here to move things around. But we need someone who's going to actually look at what's working and what's not working, not just look to raise taxes to throw more money at a problem instead of actually reinventing the wheel and seeing what's not working. And if we need to close a school because the children, the results are so awful, as some of the schools are, 5% passing the exam, state exams, and make them into smaller learning institutions with more attention, then we should be doing that because it worked. It worked under Michael Bloomberg. And as you're seeing that now that it worked, because now the statistics are coming out from NYU and other organizations that are seeing how the smaller learning institutions with new administration have been successful in improving education for these children. One of the areas I think we're not doing enough in is vocational training, making sure we partner with private institutions to get on-the-job internships for these children. I think that we live in a world where everything's always emerging. That's what's so great about the time that we're living in, is there's always advancements. But we need to move a little quickly with that, and that goes into my bringing New York City into the 21st century. We need to look at the emerging industries. And a lot of it is in technology, whether it's now designing apps, whether it's video game designing. We need to capitalize on that and start programs in our schools that reflect the needs of today. Last week was not last week, it was I think last month. The time's moving so fast for me now. They opened up the new school on Roosevelt Island, partnership with Cornell. This was such a great, brilliant idea, and we should be duplicating that. The land was the city's land, and the investment that the city made was a $100 million grant. And now we have an amazing campus that hopefully will be able to compete with Silicon Valley. We'll be able to bring young people who have ideas and entrepreneurs and startups together to create some amazing things, and we should be doing that. That's something that was also done a lot during the previous administration. We're not seeing it done now. And that was the last brainchild, I think, of Michael Bloomberg when it comes to having an educational opportunity for that, educational opportunities like that. But we need to continue to build on that type of success. Partner with private entities, you know, like when you had the automobile dealers of Greater New York, I think it was, that worked with kids that want to work with their hands and be mechanics, and partnering there. We could be doing some great work. We could do something with Con Edison. Some great work there that could be done to train these young people. Not everyone is fit for college. Not everyone people like kids, some kids like to work with their hands, and we should encourage that. We should be encouraging that, especially when we know there is a skills gap in some of those areas. And lastly, we just need to look how the city is overall being managed. I ask people when I go out into the community, I say, we're spending $15 billion more than we were just 3.5 years ago. Do you believe you're getting $3.5 billion worth of improvements in your quality of life? How are your roads? In my community, there's sinkholes. Major issues. In my car, we had a flat tire the other day. out in Queens because we hit a pothole, and I had to cancel the rest of my night. Our subway system, 70,000 delays a month, and we're sitting here with pre-World War II condition signals. Our education system that I mentioned, major issues that we need to do to improve safety, to improve learning, improve opportunities, expand programs where kids can learn trade a skill. And for me, I believe we could be doing so much better, quite frankly, with less, if we just evaluate what's going on in these various agencies. And look, I know we want to take questions because we're running out of time, but even if just revamping agencies like the Department of Design and Construction, where we're spending 3 times as much, and it takes 5 years longer than is planned. Ask any company if that would work. Ask Frank Sciammi's here, ask him how that would work out in his field. Ask Con Edison if every time you put in a transformer or a substation, it took 5 years after schedule and cost 3 times as much. We can do so much better in the city of New York. We can make New York City a place that is in the 21st century. We could be spending the money on the things that we really, truly need to improve, to keep up with population growth and economic growth. And we could be doing more to ensure that people like my parents who came here to achieve the American dream have the opportunity to do so. And that's why I'm running for mayor of the city of New York, and that's why I'm asking for everyone in this room to support me. Thank you.
Assemblywoman, we thank you very much and wish you best of luck over the next month. And we are working on having equal time. The mayor will be coming to ABNY hopefully before the election. And thank you all for coming, and good luck.
Thank you. Thanks.